So, okay. Okay. So,
I think we can start. Yes.
okay.
So,
Okay. So, I mean,
so
go
I
ahead.
will start. Yes. Thank you, Renata. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from United Nations in New York, and welcome to our 2020 International Day of Families webinar. The theme this year is Families in Development, Copenhagen and Beijing plus 25. My name is Amin Lamrabat, Information Officer in the Division for Inclusive Social Development, UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UN DESA. So we have a rich agenda today and a group of excellent speakers. So before we start, I just want to go to some rules of engagement. So please make sure that all of you, when you join the meeting, you have your microphones mute to avoid background noise. And please make sure do not activate your video camera. So make sure it's always off. And also, if you like to submit a question, please use the link that you see on the slide. It's called slido.com and type the event code IDF 2020. And also you can join us via Facebook Live at facebook.com join UNDESA. So please do not use the chat box available in WebEx unless you want to comment on something, but it's mostly for questions. Please use these two platforms. And only the moderator that will review the questions and ask for a response, hopefully time permitting. So the meeting will be recorded and the video link will be posted on our website. And now I am pleased to give the floor to my colleague Renata, who is the focal point on family at UNDESA in my division for inclusive social development. She will be moderating our event today. Thank you. Renata, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amin. Welcome to our webinar and happy International Day of Families to all of you and all of your families. This meeting is organized by the Division for Inclusive Social Development in the Department of Economic and Social Affairs at the United Nations. The event is organized in cooperation with UN Women and UNICEF, and as well as civil society represented here by International Federation for Family Development and ATD Fourth World. Our speakers for today will be joining us from New York, Mexico City, Florence, Brussels, and Paris. This virtual meeting gives us an opportunity to welcome people from all over the world in real time, and we had a lot of interest in this event. Dear friends, today's speakers will talk about the importance of Copenhagen and Beijing for social justice and equality and for families around the world. We will also share recent research on family-oriented policies with distinguished experts we have cooperated with over the years. We will also discuss the topic that concerns us all now. How are families coping with the pandemic? Let me open the floor to our speakers for today. First, we will hear from Ms. Daniela Bass, who is the Director of the Division for Inclusive Social Development and will deliver her opening remarks.
Dear delegates, United Nations entities and civil society representatives, academics, families, ladies and gentlemen, it is with pleasure that I'm sharing with you today some thoughts on how we can celebrate this year, the 15th of May, that is the International Day of the Family. I am Daniela Bass, the Director of the Division for Inclusive Social Development of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Development here in New York, and my division hosts the United Nations focal point of a family globally. I also wish to thank my colleagues for having organized this very important celebration today through this webinar. And today, we acknowledge all families, particularly those that are struggling with the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. The abilities to cope with the health, economic, and social consequences of this pandemic are unequally distributed among people and countries. Families without savings or access to social protection are more likely to fall into poverty or sink into deeper poverty and face growing inequalities due to the health shock or as a result of the economic downfall. Poverty and inequalities are especially visible now when middle-class families, especially high-income professionals, are able to work from home, while the lower-income family breadwinners employed in services sectors face unemployment and hardship. Ladies and gentlemen, as you may recall, the year 2020 is a big anniversary for the international community as we celebrate 75 years since the United Nations was created. The year 2020, though, is also the 25th anniversary for two major international agreements. And here I'm talking about the World Conference on Women that took place in 1995 and the World Social Summit, or as it was called, the World Summit for Social Development. We call it the Social Summit, World Social Summit. And it also celebrates 25 years. And it is also known as the Copenhagen Summit. It took place, as I said, also in 1995 in Copenhagen, Denmark. To reflect the importance of the Declaration of Copenhagen, the World Summit on Social Development, let us think of the pledge of governments at that World Summit for Social Development 25 years ago to place particular focus on and give priority attention to the fight against the worldwide conditions that pose severe threats to the health, safety, peace, security, and well-being of all our people. The message of Copenhagen still rings true after a quarter century of development with another quote: "The goals and objectives of social development require continuous efforts to reduce and eliminate major sources of social distress and instability for the family and for society." These words might as well be spoken today. We must ask ourselves, if such conditions had been fully created, wouldn't we be better prepared for the current pandemic? Although the World Summit for Social Development took key steps to prevent and reduce the gap of inequalities, sadly, inequality is on the rise with the current crisis, while it's deepening it even further. Now, it is the time to remind ourselves of the consensus reached at the Copenhagen Summit to put the needs of people at the center of development, at the center of international cooperation as a major priority of contemporary international relations. It is worth to note that from a family perspective, the importance of the World Summit for Social Development, or as I said, the World Social Summit, is that it pioneered the concept of work-family balance that can be especially noted in the areas of equal partnership between men and women when it comes to also community life, as well as work-family balance and social integration and inclusion, supporting, educating, and nurturing roles as indispensable for social cohesion. The role of families in social cohesion is tested in the current crisis, as the families once again become the primary hub of international relations, necessitating greater international and intergenerational solidarity. So, dear friends, today We are sharing recent research on family policies with you for the achievement of the 2030 Agenda and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, as we call them, SDGs, which, like the World Summit and the Charter of the United Nations, are people-centered. In the division that I lead, the Division for Inclusive Social Development in DESA, we have prepared a report and sponsored the report that we're launching today about the family-related policies and priorities in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, as reported in the voluntary national reviews of 2016, 17, 18, and 2019. And we tried to answer the question on what family-oriented policies governments took on board to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. So let me highlight two of our conclusions in the report. One, the importance of integrate family policies in the overall development planning at national levels. And two, policies have to effectively respond to the numerous challenges faced by families in a rapidly changing world, now facing an unprecedented global health and social crisis that impacts all dimensions of our lives. Our speakers today will show you the full picture of the importance of family policies for the achievement of the SDGs. And thank you for your support in raising awareness about the role of families and family-oriented policies for development in your countries and communities. I wish to conclude by sharing with you my personal considerations. This crisis, though challenging, gives us the opportunity to advance existing norms and to think of innovative family policies oriented to development for it to be sustainable. And this new mindset can transform our world, making the COVID-19 pandemic a watershed moment in history, after which the world collectively embarks in building more equitable societies and aligns its policies with the aspirations of the Sustainable Development Goals. With this, I wish you happy International Day of the Family. To all families, of course, and all of you who are attending the webinar. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniela, for your professional and personal insights. I would like now to invite our speaker, Ms. Laura Take. She's the Policy Advisor, Progress of the World's Women, Research and Data Team at the UN. Laura, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Yes. Thank you for that kind introduction, Renata. It's a real pleasure to be here today with you all. Thanks very much to Renata and her colleagues at UN DESA for organizing such an interesting panel. As Renata said, my name is Laura Take, and I work in the research and data team at UN Women, where I lead UN Women's flagship report, Progress of the World's Women. And today I'm going to focus on the findings of our most recent report on families in a changing world. In this presentation, I will talk about why families are such an important institution for women and for gender equality, but also the ways in which families can be a difficult or contradictory space for women and girls. I will talk about why ensuring that families are places of equality and justice is vital, not only for women, but as a basis to achieve broader development goals. And I will highlight some of the policies that can address gender equality in families and why they're even more important in the current context of the COVID pandemic. And next slide, please. So why did we choose to focus our flagship report on families? Well, policymakers and civil society often target the economy and the political sphere to bring about change on development and gender equality. but what happens in the private domestic sphere of families is equally important. As I already mentioned, families have often been a contradictory space for women and girls. At times, they provide love, support, and a sense of identity, but they're also places that are marked by inequality that can hinder women's choices and opportunities. And so it's through family relations that people share vital resources for their well-being, like housing and income, care for children and those who are sick and elderly. But families can also be a source of violence and insecurity for women. So consider this, every single day, 137 women across the world are killed by a member of their own family. Historically, individual rights have been granted to men as heads of families, and with it, considerable power and control over the labour and lives of women and children, while responsibility for care and nurturance of family members has been assigned to women. And I think we see the result of that division in the fact that women have often lacked economic security and independence in their family lives. Feminist economists have highlighted the ways in which families are sites of cooperative conflict, places where women often need to bargain for their rights. And policies and laws can help them to do that, as I will explore in a moment. But in addition, states have an obligation to uphold women's rights in families. In international law, particularly in the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the protection of the family is intrinsically linked to the principle of equality and non-discrimination, particularly with regards to marriage. And that means that all laws, policies, and practices regarding the family should not discriminate against individual family members or against any form of family. The next slide, please. So if that's not enough, we can also see that equality in the family is essential for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, and I think this is something that some of the other speakers will touch on. But to achieve SDG 5 on gender equality and women's empowerment, we need to focus on the elimination of violence and an end to harmful practices, which often happen in the context of families, to ensuring women's access to economic resources, and to ensuring that responsibility for unpaid care and domestic work are shared more equally. But aside from SDG 5, several of the other SDGs also depend on gender equality in the family. So if we think about SDG 3 on health, achieving that goal will require women to have access to reproductive health care and family planning. On SDG 4, to achieve our targets on education, it will be imperative that girls are able to delay marriage and complete their schooling. And on SDG 8, on decent work, we know that decent work will only be achieved for women and men if workplaces have family-friendly policies and governments put in place policies and programs to promote work-family reconciliation. And as Daniela mentioned, another important framework that we're celebrating this year is the Beijing Platform for Action. This remains the most comprehensive and transformative global agenda for the achievement of gender equality. And this year, as Daniela mentioned, we're marking the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. My team led a review on the implementation of this framework, which was based on submissions from 167 countries around the world. Important gain for gender equality since 1995. More girls are in school than ever before. Maternal mortality has fallen significantly, and women's representation in parliaments has more than doubled since 1995. But at the same time, 32 million girls are still not in school, with marginalized groups particularly likely to be deprived of a chance of education. Every year, 300,000 women still die in childbirth from entirely preventable causes. And in 2020, it's still the case that 3/4 of the world's parliamentarians are men. Today, violence against women is on the policy agenda in a way that was completely unthinkable in 1995, but the problem itself remains widespread and devastating in its impacts. And all of these issues are intimately linked to families. Whether girls can go to school, whether women can enjoy a healthy life free from violence and participate in politics at all levels is often enabled or constrained by relationships. Next slide, please. So now that we're all convinced that women's rights and families matter very much to women, but also to broader sustainable development goals and to building stronger and fairer societies, how do we get there? The progress report outlines a comprehensive family-friendly policy agenda that can advance gender equality based on 8 recommendations. And I'm going to talk about some of those recommendations in a minute. But before I do, I want to emphasize the importance of acknowledging family diversity. The report shows that in order to implement the policy agenda it outlines, it not only needs to be tailored to diverse national and local contexts, but also needs to be responsive to the realities of how families live today. So one of the innovative contributions of this report was to analyze, in partnership with DESA, a brand new data set on household composition, which shows for the very first time, using data, that family forms today are diverse. So if you look at this slide, which provides the global averages, it's striking that only slightly less than 4 in 10 households, 38%, are comprised of a couple living with children. The second most widespread household type, at around a quarter, is the extended family household, which includes at least one adult and other relatives, and may include children. And these households are particularly common in sub-Saharan Africa and Central and Southern Asia. Lone parent households make up a significant proportion of households at around 8%, so almost 1 in 10. And the vast majority of these are led by women, over 80%, and they often juggle paid work, child rearing, and care of other dependents. Lone mother households are the most common in Latin America, the Caribbean. Other kinds of diversity also exist. So rates of marriage in some regions are declining sharply as couples decide to cohabit instead or before marriage. And an increasing number of countries are also recognizing same relationships and according to those families too. Policies are often based on an assumption of a certain family form, a couple with young children. But the reality is that there's many other family forms, and that these need to be recognized and supported too, if family policies are to be effective. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, this slide presents 8 of the main recommendations from the progress report. And I think these recommendations are clustered into kind of three groups, or 3 outcomes that we really want to achieve. So the first is about ensuring that women and girls can exercise choice and voice in their lives. And here we have recommendations around family laws, the need to recognize diversity of relationship forms, but also to ensure that women can choose whether they get married, when they get married, who they get married to, and also provide the possibility of divorce if needed. We know that in many countries in the world, women don't have the same rights to initiate divorce as men. Family laws are an area of law which have huge impacts on violence against women. If you're in a violent relationship and you can't exit it easily, this has a huge impact on your well-being. Also on resources, laws and policies around child custody and maintenance have a huge impact on women's economic independence. The second sort of cluster of recommendations around this choice and voice outcome is about investments.
Laura?
Yes.
1 second. I think we need the next slide, because this is the slide. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Are we good?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, thank you. So investments in public services are also critical, especially around education and reproductive healthcare, so that women's and girls' life chances are expanded and they can make informed choices about sex and childbearing. The second sort of outcome that we look for is to assure women and girls of physical safety. And here we're thinking about all the laws and policies that are needed to be implemented to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls, which often happens in the context of families. But in addition to laws, access to justice support services for survivors, as well as investments in prevention programs that address the root causes of violence, are essential. And these recommendations take on particular significance at the moment, as we hear reports of escalating violence against women in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. As large proportions of the global population are locked down, millions of women are literally trapped with their abusers. So now more than ever, recognizing services that respond to violence against women as essential services, which have historically been chronically underfunded, is really, really important. And then the third outcome that we look for in terms of our family-friendly policy response is to guarantee women's economic security. And here we have a set of recommendations around the need for universal gender-responsive social protection systems, which would include paid maternity and parental leave, social transfers for all families with children, and in particular support for lone parents who are much more likely to be live in poverty, and adequate pensions for women who've spent a lifetime caring for others to ensure they can have a dignified retirement. Also here we have a set of recommendations around high quality care services for children, older persons and those with disabilities. We are asking governments to support families to care, to enable women and men with care responsibilities to access paid work and provide decent employment in the care sector. And here again, the COVID-19 crisis really lays bare the issue of care work, both paid and unpaid. It is truly a care crisis as well as a health crisis in which women are bearing the brunt of the impact. I also wanted to say that in the context of the COVID crisis, if there's one silver lining, it's perhaps that the pandemic has forced us to rethink our priorities. And what we consider now essential is precisely the kind of work that our economies have consistently neglected and devalued, the kind of care work that we see women do such a disproportionate amount of. Next slide, please. And on the subject of care, I wanted to let you know that today, for the International Day of Families, we've just launched a new interactive on care work, which is available at this link, interactive.unwomen.org. This is the screenshot. And with this interactive, you can calculate how much time you will spend over your lifetime doing unpaid care work and compare it to the global average, and learn about ways that it can be redistributed and better shared. So do check that out. Next slide. And on that note, I'll stop and wish everyone a happy Families Day, and I hope that in spite of the lockdown, you'll all have a chance to spend time with your families today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura, for these very insightful lessons learned by UN Women. I'm especially grateful for the policy recommendations, very comprehensive policy recommendations that are contained in the report. We would like to inspire governments to adopt these important policies. Thank you. I would like now to invite our next speaker. She is Ms. Rosario Esteno. Her official title in Spanish is Profesora Investigadora Titular. She is the family researcher and sociologist at the Center of Research and Higher Studies in Social Anthropology in Mexico City. Rosario, you have the floor.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Renata. I want to thank the Department of Economic and Social Development and the Division of Inclusive Social Development through its focal point on the family for the opportunity to present a synthesis of the report about family-oriented priorities, policies, and programs in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, as reported in the voluntary national reviews from 2016 to 2019. Next, please. Today, 25 years after, the Beijing Platform of Action and the Copenhagen Declaration, as Daniela and Laura mentioned before, continue to be the most relevant as they highlight families as active agents in social development. Most people, and most of us, live in families or have one, regardless the living arrangement. Hence, family policies matters to leave no one behind. The analysis of the 127 voluntary national reviews submitted by 114 countries indicates that families may be key to ensure progress towards the SDGs by 2030, with close to 90% of countries making specific references to families. And in order of importance, governments consider family policies useful for the implementation of the SDGs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11, and 16. Governments mostly refer to families as units of diagnosis or as targets in their efforts towards the achievement of those SDGs. But family-oriented policies are not considered as integral part of overall development efforts. The potential families and family-oriented policies to achieve SDGs remains to be fully addressed in overall socioeconomic policy. Next, please. Here you can see a graph of the number of countries reporting on each of the family-oriented policies. And as you can see, peace, justice, and strong institutions and gender equality concentrate most of the efforts, but they are mostly focused on legislative measures and support to victims. Next, please. Now we will see some of the programs on each SDGs. Out of 95 member states reporting on poverty, 33 are developing sound family-oriented policies to combat it. Some have implemented programs that work closely with targeted families. Others work with families as co-managers of programs, and some involve parents in planning to overcome their precarious socioeconomic conditions or address their specific needs. Families are regarded as active agents in the development and are well supported in countries that have a robust institutional welfare system. In others, the institutional context is more challenging and assistance to low-income families provided on a ad hoc basis. Next one, please. Here we observe two main types of family policies. The first one refers to family farming. Some member states with a well-developed welfare system have promoted family farming as a tool to reinforce big chains of production, commercialization, consumption of food, to boost agriculture while integrating vulnerable families. Others, facing major challenges as a result of hunger and food insecurity, primarily implemented to support vulnerable families. Few member states have developed educational and health efforts aimed at changing parental behavior to improve children's nutrition. Next, please. Although substantial progress is reported, several member states address maternal and neonatal and infant mortality rates and ratios primarily through a medical and clinical lens, which has been acknowledged as necessary but insufficient to achieve SDG 3 targets. Adolescent pregnancy and the use of contraceptive methods are either underreported or are a cause of concern. Due to prevalent gender-biased values, most countries fall behind in developing policies in these areas. Next, please. Regarding quality of education, early childhood education is offered in several countries, but only 11 have implemented programs to empower parents as collaborative agents in improving the quality of education. They aim at developing parenting skills and engaging parents in school plans to enhance children's proficiency and competence. Some member states have extended this to primary education. Few member states have introduced the development of values and soft skills, promoting ethical stands based on civic culture and human rights, but families as intergenerational agents are not involved in reinforcing them. Next. Here we can observe the areas to improve quality of education where countries have family programs. 9 countries have new programs and have introduced new values and soft skills. 7 have empowered and engaged parents in early childhood education, and only 3 have engaged parents in school plans. Next. Gender equality remains a widespread and central concern, as Laura pointed out. All reporting governments have or are in the process of incorporating gender equality issues at the legislative level. These measures represent most of the efforts undertaken, and several member states have acknowledged their limited reach to reduce gender inequality due to the deep sociocultural barriers grounded in prevailing traditional gender values. The most effective family-oriented policies are within the field of family-work balance. Next, please. 12 member states provide different coordinated and comprehensive parental leave schemes to promote a better shared responsibility and conciliation between family and work. Some also provide flexible work, public or private childcare facilities, or shared parental or family relatives leave to alleviate women's work burden and promote their empowerment. Next, please. 24 member states reported progress with respect to inclusive and accessible green and open public areas. However, only 3 involve families through legislations or programs in feeding policy making, planning, and management of local areas, such as residents deciding where new homes, green spaces, and other facilities should go and how they should look and feel. Next. Although the information is insufficient, violence against children and women are reported as serious challenges by several countries. Strategies to combat it have been focused mainly on victim support and legislative measures. However, comprehensive family-oriented policies are either lacking or fragile. Parental violence against children is often reported as a result of domestic violence rather than harsh parenting practices. Hence, only Australia, Germany, and Norway have implemented positive parenting programs aimed at reducing it. Member states acknowledge that sexual violence against women by age 18 is an issue of concern. It is exerted primarily by intimate partners, and similarly, it is primarily noted as an issue of domestic rather than gender-based violence. Therefore, the implementation of policies and programs aimed at empowering women and building equal, close, and positive partner relationships is hindered. Next one. Here we can observe the different areas where the family policies are concentrated, and in human trafficking, sexual violence, but mostly legislative measures in domestic violence against children, and in the criminal justice system, and violence against children, sexual violence, school, and labor. And only 3 countries report programs against violence, to combat violence to children by caregivers. Next. The key recommendations are to accelerate progress towards SDGs, families-oriented policies should be integrated into overall socioeconomic policy making. Multidimensional perspectives in policy design, including the role of families, must be reinforced. Health policies must work at the sociocultural level and in coordination with medical programs to extend the reach of family-oriented policies. It is necessary to go beyond legislative measures and address sociocultural barriers to tackle violence against women and children, adolescent pregnancy, child and early marriage, and other relevant issues. Next. And the key messages are for family-oriented policies and priorities are still absent in most national plans and sustainable development strategies. Several member states address families as beneficiaries, but the potential of families as agents of development remains underutilized. The integrative nature of the 2030 Agenda demands multisectoral and comprehensive actions and the recognition of spillover effects between SDGs. And many VNRs show a transitional trend towards assuming such approaches, but a few governments have undertaken a family lens approach to combat poverty, hunger, overcome education and healthcare challenges, as well as gender inequality and violence against children and women. Next. Well, thank you for being here, and have a nice, happy family day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosario. I wanted to mention that the project that was undertaken was truly comprehensive and very, very time-consuming. And I think what we have now is a very good picture of what countries are doing for families. So if you want to, for example, look up your country and see, you can search the document. It's available on our website. And you can put the country name, and then you will go and see which policies the country adopted under which SDG. So it's a very useful guide. People often ask me, what is my country doing? What are the best practices in some other countries in specific areas? So this is an excellent guide for everyone. And I'm very proud that we are launching this report today. And thank you, Rosario, for your work on this important project. Now, I would like to mention that we are also launching another report today, which is called Families, Family Policies and Sustainable Development Goals. We had the chance to talk about the synthesis report 2 years ago at the International Day, and I'm happy to say that now the full publication is ready. And I would like now to give the floor to its primary coordinator and researcher for this project, Mr. Dominic Richardson. He is the Chief Social Policy and Economic Analysis at UNICEF Office of Research in Innocenti, and he is joining us from Florence.
Thank you very much, Renata. It's a great pleasure to be here and amongst these experts and be able to speak to everybody about our project and Happy International Day of the Family. This project has been 4 years in the making, and it's involved a number of academics from around the world. We've written this report with the purpose of trying to stimulate the use of family policies in the responses to the SDGs. I just want to mention some of the co-authors of the report. There's Asuna Dogorova and Daryl Higgins and Keiko Hirao, Zitha Mokamani, Michaela Robila, and Despina Karamperidou. The project, we were the academic group, I suppose, that wrote the study, but we wouldn't have been able to do this without the support of our generous funders, which were the La Caixa Foundation and the Stiftung Menberg. IFFD, the International Federation for Family Development, coordinated the work, helped us meet to make this project happen. We met 3 times, Barcelona, San Jose, and New York, and very well looked after in all of those places. And Ima Rognoni was our family policy advisor throughout. So before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody involved. It's been a long time coming, but we think it's worth the wait. Next slide, please. If you could click through the slide, please, we can bring everything up all at once. I'd like to talk about the key messages first. I think it's important to get some of the things across. When the SDGs began, family policies globally were gathering pace. They were strengthening, and innovation was happening, including things like the use of conditional cash transfers and unconditional transfers to families, linking with education, health, training, information. And more governments were investing in those, but they didn't really appear in the SDG documentation, and families weren't mentioned. But we know families as the most integral social unit of societies, and it's very important to focus on the family when we talk about social development. It just makes sense. So this is why we pursued this work. There's plenty of evidence out there on the cross-sectoral effects of the family policy, I should say. Something that Rosario mentioned, spillover effects of family policy into multiple goals. They're evident, and we see them in our study, and I'll show you a little bit about that in a minute. We also found, particularly through our review of health and cash interventions for families, that families as agents were important to achieving the social goals that were desired. Again, it was something that came up in Rosario's study, that there's less of an appreciation of families as agents, and we just think there's a lot more that can be done in order to meet the SDGs, involving the family as agents and involving family policy as having strong spillover effects. The last point really draws on something that Laura said. Their family policies, we always want them to do good things, but sometimes they can have negative effects, and particularly we find this in the area of gender support. Sometimes supports to help families raise children where they're very young can ask more of women than men as the traditional carers in a family, and can have effects in relation to women's attachment to the labour market, career development. Next slide, please. Oh, if we go back, there was one thing I just wanted to say at the end. We wrote this report before COVID-19 hit. We couldn't predict it like many people. But COVID-19 adds both complexity and opportunity, I think, in the field of family policy, and I will talk about that at the end of the presentation. So as I say, family is the cornerstone of society and there's innovation. So we were asking how do family policies affect the different goals? How do family attributes impact on effective policies, and how can we mobilize family policies more? Next slide. We covered six of the SDG goals here, and within each goal we focused on 2 targets. The example for poverty there, eradicate extreme poverty and reduce poverty in all its dimensions, for examples. You'll be able to see the rest in the synthesis study or in the first chapter of the report. Next, please. We didn't cover all of the SDGs. We focused on those 6 primarily because of the most direct influence on the family. It's not to say that the other goals are not influential on the family. I mean, it's very easy to understand that environment, of course, is going to affect the family, is going to affect the space where families can play, where children can play, and the quality of health within a family, for instance. And we're living in an example right now about how global influences can have an effect on family quite seriously, and of course there's other areas too, relation to governance, city planning, that would also have effect on the family. But if you imagine the ecological system theory, the Bronfenbrenner model, you can imagine all sorts of layers influencing the family, from the global influence to the national policy influence, communities and relationships. And well, we were aiming for the cluster around the family as the focus. Next slide, please. As I said, we had a team of academics undertaking the research. We reviewed the available data and we've mapped it. You'll see in the report. And we reviewed literature for where family policies were evaluated for their influence on poverty, health, education, and so on. We with a very systematic approach to our review. We focused on evaluations, meta-analyses, reviews, natural policy experiments, and so on. And please, the next slide. We didn't take every study. We tried to introduce a layer of quality. The quality assurance process is described here. We ask 3 questions essentially. Is the way the family outcomes are represented in the study, are they conceptually coherent? I always use the example of James Coleman, who is very famous for his work on social capital, using the example of a sole parent family to determine whether or not parental relationships were strong. Now, I think that's a very not a very good proxy. And when our family outcomes were poorly conceptualized, we did not include the study. We asked the question then whether the author was using an appropriate methodology and method to test associations, and if that was good, we kept the study. And then whether or not they did it correctly. We included 120 studies. That's just under 70% of total. We found very little on youth employment and most on health. And we asked the same set of questions. How was the family policy evaluated? Who was it for? How was the intervention undertaken? And what were the results? Next slide, please. Our main findings are, please just click through, wonderful. Our main findings, of course, is no silver bullet. Family policies are effective in a portfolio. You can't just deliver a cash benefit and hope everything would work. But we found that the cash benefits didn't just function in the realm of reducing poverty and deprivation, which they did consistently. But they could, if well designed, they could also promote employment and gender equality. Family-focused health approaches are very effective in comparison to dealing with an individual with a health concern. The use of family therapists is something that we recommend from our look at health interventions involving the family. Everybody will know how important family factors are for education. The influence of the home environment on education outcomes is very strong, often larger than the school influence indeed. And this is actually something that it can be quite unequal across countries, within countries, and something to think about in COVID when children are locked down and learning from home. Family policies need to be gender neutral in outcomes. This has a serious influence on rights for women and, of course, for children. Laura mentioned the number of households headed by women, single parent households. If the early policies are not gender neutral and it affects women's employment, that will spill over into their earnings and naturally poverty for the child that the mother is caring for, the children the mother is caring for. There's very many good reasons to ensure policies are gender neutral. And our work in UNICEF at the moment on gender responsive social protection policies is something to follow. And finally, for youth employment effects, we did find some, but they are very underinformed. In fact, policy effects on youth employment and youth activation are not very clearly elaborated. And often it's the macroeconomic factors that are pushing youth activation or influencing youth activation. But there is a role for family policies should governments wish to innovate. The next slide, please. Okay, we'll skip that. Let's not. It's okay, please. We'll go to the next slide. I'll come back to the violence, but essentially it's related to parenting, education, etc. are important. So this slide shows how, if you read it from left to right, and no poverty in the top corner, that when policies and programs for no poverty were assessed, we also found for those policies an effect on health, education, gender equality, and decent work. Where there's a white square instead of a blue square, that shows we didn't find anything, but I have to say it doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means that we didn't find it in our review. I can't overstate the need for further research and improved data in this area, and I'll give you an example in a minute. So strong spillover effects everywhere. We found less or fewer spillover effects in health, but we weren't looking at health in a systematic sense, but rather individual health interventions, and they had their own story to tell. Go to the next slide, please. So we're asking from this report, we're asking practitioners that work with families take note of family professionals who engage in early interventions. A stitch in time saves 9, they say, and to allow family agency to really take a role. More data work is needed on the family. At the moment, I'm undertaking some regional studies of the COVID effect on families' well-being using the SDGs, the same goals mentioned in this study. My first look at Eastern Europe and Central Asia found very limited data, for instance, on something as basic as child income poverty. There was insufficient data indeed to look at that in any detail. There's evidence to support that, to show that family policy is indeed effective, and we could innovate in various areas and learn more about implementation strategies. That's something we're doing in our gender responsive work. And when we find good policies, and I think this is a question for most research, when we find good policies, we need to know more and do better when it comes to scaling and transferability. My last slide is about COVID. Now, I think can we move to the next slide, please? And I'll address this very quickly. As advocates for family policy and improvements in the situation of families and children, Daniela said at the beginning, inequality is going up, etc. We're not really in a position to celebrate our gains too far. COVID is creating all sorts of challenges and drags, and there will be economic contractions all over the globe. But this doesn't mean that governments can renege on their commitments to the SDGs and families. We need to ensure that the focus is maintained. Following the global financial crisis, many countries went into long economic contractions, and the initial stimulus soon turned to austerity. And during austerity, family policies were cut in many cases or reformed. As family policy advocates, and those who wish to see the SDGs be achieved for families, we should have a close eye on family policy reforms in the next year in response to austerity, and ensure that the SDG commitments are not forgotten. The other thing I wanted to talk about was I won't talk anymore about the inequality before, during, and after. I think that I think we certainly have a challenge. I've been reviewing family policies and fiscal stimulus in response to COVID-19, and what we see a lot of is very short-term, small, cash-based interventions, which are not universal in terms of the family coverage. And 1 month of one cash benefit is not going to be sufficient for addressing the problems that COVID-19 is going to bring. And the other work we've been doing shows a very strong connection between contractions in GDP and increases in extreme poverty, increases in infant mortality, increases in youth NEET rates. And indeed, they're happening at a greater rate than the contractions, which show unequal effects, particularly for the most vulnerable. But as much as there's many challenges heading our way and we need to keep an eye on it, COVID opens an opportunity to reset the public policy discourse. We haven't seen an influential crisis like COVID for very many years, and it's bringing to light the importance of strong welfare infrastructure and strong family policy if we want to get past it with the least damage possible. With that, I want to finish. I'm sorry, I think I talked a little bit too long. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dominique. Indeed, I think we all agree that now is not the time to cut support for families in the current situation that we encounter. I encourage everyone to read the report and to draw lessons. It's a great source. And again, the emphasis of Dominique and also Rosario pointed to the data collection. We really need more investment in data collection so we can improve on family policies, evaluate them, and then improve on them. So Dominique, you mentioned COVID-19 at the end of your presentation, and we'll continue on this topic, and we'll hear about the impact of COVID-19 and its aftermath on families and social integration. And our speaker will be Mr. Ignacio Socias, who is the Director of Communication and International Relations at the International Federation for Family Development. Ignacio, go ahead.
Thank you, Renata. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Here in Brussels, from where I'm talking to you. And let me thank the organizers for giving me the chance to participate in this special celebration, as is going to be held online for the first time, and in such a unprecedented, unexpected times. Also because I'm going to talk precisely about this, the impact of the pandemic and its aftermath on families and social integration. I think we know the social protection families provide is especially important in times of uncertainty like this one. Why? Because family provides this not only material, but also non-material care and support, time, affection, which is what we need, and in times like this, more than ever. this has helped us to see things that maybe we hadn't realized before. At least many people haven't. We have seen how now everybody recognizes the importance of care, also in some extent the importance of education, family life, solidarity, especially intergenerational solidarity, and ecology. I like very much this quote of Saint-Exupéry, who said that many times the essential is invisible to the eyes. We need to recognize now and learn. So that this is not just a time we wait to be over as soon as possible. This is not a chance to hit the pause button and to say, okay, let's wait and better times will come. No, it will be a pity if we miss the chance to learn from these times. This is probably a once in a life opportunity to do so. To see the invisible, to make the invisible visible, and to recognize that many things we maybe, but society as a whole, for sure, has been focusing. It's not so important, maybe even irrelevant. Families have shown us that there are topics we need to change precisely because they have been able to deal with them in a new way, in a different way. Aspects like work-family balance, working from home now seems much more accessible than before. Education. Parents have had to act not only as parents, but also as teachers, as mentors. They have had to figure out how to cope with this isolation, how to keep mental stability, how to make good use of time, good use of new technologies, how to prevent conflict and violence. Such an important lesson for the children in the future. All this has been done in this very unnoticed style, typical of families. That's why I think we need to really spend some time thinking about it and reaching some conclusions for the future. Because if we do, then the future will be better for everyone. What should we do? In my opinion, we should take a very careful look to how we're sharing responsibility. To start with, at home. Housework can't be always the task for women. I know it is not, but it's still so in such a big extent. And then everything else. Not only men have to be responsible, but employers have to be more responsible. The state has to be more responsible. Then work flexibility, telework, working from home, or maybe that's not always possible, but if we have our set of priorities in society clear, we will understand how important it is for parents to get time to be at home. Sometimes because they are really needed, but usually they should have time to spend with their children. And also intergenerational solidarity. This has been maybe one of the hardest lessons of this pandemic. And also, we knew that from before, sustainability, ecology, to make this planet a place where we can live healthy, something we can enjoy. And there will be some indicators for that. How are we protecting health, preventing health? How are we trying to keep safe and healthy working conditions? Not only from a physical point of view, but also from a mental, emotional point of view. How do we take care of older people? And how this social protection works in society as a whole, when good professionals were needed, good professionals who are trained, equipped, who know what they should do. And last, very important in my opinion, we know children are not the main affected directly by the pandemic, but the impact on them will be more lasting and more harmful. Topics, things, for instance, in nutrition, education, even health at the end, violence. As a report from UNICEF has recently stated, and also another report by the OECD, parental employment will be very, very important with all these characteristics of the labor market we were talking about, because it will be key to fighting child poverty. So these are just some quick ideas, because I don't have much, which I hope can be helpful. We tried, as we are present in 71 countries, to ask our parents not only about their experience, but about their children's experience. And we got some interesting replies from 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old who will tell us in a very short video now what they have learned from this pandemic. So I wish all of you to keep safe, and not only safe, but also more wiser, more really happy, because we know that we have learned something, that this time has not been time we have wasted, but time we have made good use of it to learn and to make our lives and everyone else's life better. Thank you very much.
Renata, sorry.
Now we'll see the video. Thank you.
Hello from New York to all our family enrichment friends. While Corona has had many negative consequences, we believe that now the family is in a golden opportunity to grow. If you know, Shakespeare wrote his best works while in quarantine from the plague in 1606.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Awa, je suis sénégalaise et je vis au Sénégal. Alors au Sénégal, nous ne sommes pas confinés, mais il y a un couvre-feu et on essaie de limiter vraiment nos déplacements au minimum, c'est-à-dire faire les courses nécessaires pour la maison, etc. Je suis en télétravail, comme beaucoup d'entreprises. Mon mari aussi travaille de la maison et voilà, voici les deux petits qui ne vont plus à l'école depuis plus de 2 mois maintenant. Aujourd'hui, je dirais que le plus gros challenge, c'est vraiment d'occuper les enfants pour que je puisse travailler.
Júlia, minha filha, tem 11 anos, e eu sou manicure, atendo um salão. Bom, achei que a minha renda seria, achei que seria baixo, mas graças a Deus superei 70% da minha renda, consegui, e não parei totalmente. E também, graças a Deus, veio o auxílio emergencial que me ajudou.
Siempre estaba en la casa y jugaba conmigo. Is over, I will remember playing outside with my brothers and spending lots of time with my family.
Thank you very much, Ignacio, and thank you for this wonderful, wonderful and very moving video, and also hearing from the children. And our last speaker for today is Ms. Isabelle Pipard-Perrin, and she's the Director General at International Movement ATD Fourth World. She will focus on learning from families living in poverty in times of pandemic. Isabelle, yours is the floor.
Thank you, Renata. I'm in France, and what I will share with you all comes out from the lives of the 150 ATD community groups in 40 countries in the Global South and Global North. In these times of crisis, families living in poverty challenge us. They challenge us, by the way, they build solidarity. They challenge us by their struggle to live and live as a family, and they challenge us also by their hopes for the future. About solidarity. In the middle of all the difficulties they face daily, families living in poverty show incredible energy to cope and take responsibilities. In Democratic Republic of Congo, for instance, the young people we know who learn from their parents to take care of other people, walk for miles to dialogue with people in remote communities, and look together what could be the appropriate protective measure. This action led them to advocate to the local authorities for free access to clean water. In Central Africa, young people have built mobile washing places, you just saw them, to make clean water and soap available. Of course, how do you keep washing your hands when no running water is available, or when the cost of a bucket of clean water has doubled? In Guatemala, the Philippines, as in Spain or in the Netherlands, adults have gone out to check on their neighbors to make sure they are okay. They coordinate local initiatives to ensure that the support made available because of the crisis reaches those most in need. Because of the measures adopted to cope with the pandemic, in many countries, people who depend on informal activities to survive daily are faced with a stark choice: to go out to find work and risk sanction and being infected, or to see their children starve. Without social protection floor, people can only rely on the solidarity of others as poor as themselves. All around the world, families tell us, of course, we are afraid of being sick. Healthcare is not affordable for us. But what we fear the most is dying of hunger. This is why in Madagascar, Mrs. Louise, whose life is very difficult, shared the money received from the cash transfer with her neighbor who could not be registered because she had no official documents. This is how people resist the crisis. They share food. Each time we offer them the opportunity to do it, they are also eager to share ideas and to think about what should change. Families in poverty challenge us by their determination to live as a family. For many people trapped in the permanent crisis of poverty, this pandemic is one more crisis on top of the many struggles they face. Everywhere, the pandemic and the measures adopted to cope with it aggravate the situation. In the United States and in France, it is now obvious that the pandemic kills more in poor communities, and we see every day people lining up for food distribution. What we know less is how these measures have an impact on the fragile balance of family life. And on this International Day, we must underline it. Family life becomes such a challenge when you must live on a very low income or no income at all, locked in very small dwellings with the children out of school. Authorities and parents from more privileged backgrounds thought that children should definitely not stop following school programs during the pandemic. But what was put in place further increased the inequalities. How can you choose between giving food to the children or paying the connection for the lesson online? How to create space for children to focus and study? How to support them when you cannot read and write? And during months without school, many children have stopped whatever learning programs are being offered. There is a huge risk that many kids will never go back to school. This is a terrible blow for the families who put so much hope in education. Another impact of this crisis concerns contacts between children in foster care and their parents. We hear almost nothing about it. In countries where social services are strong, many families living in poverty have their children removed into care due to confusion between neglect, inequality, and poverty. For most of these families, visits were cancelled abruptly, and parents have no information. In some cases, it took plenty of time and energy in ensuring that the visit will be replaced by phone calls. Because of the lockdown, some draconian decisions are taken too quickly. Elsewhere, what about children living in the streets? How do they find their daily livelihood and a place to sleep under curfew? In some places, we saw children being removed and sent to their families without any preparation, or gathered into places where there are not enough educators to ensure the security and integrity of all. And now, families living in poverty challenge us for the future. In this time of pandemic, to save people's lives, our leaders have been able to take decisions previously considered impossible. The families who endure living and struggling in the permanent crisis of poverty, which kills people, ask us for equally determined action. And we have a roadmap to answer and to be ambitious. We have the Sustainable Development Goals. It's time to come together to achieve the SDGs in partnership with the families living in poverty. Making room for their experience and thinking, we can invent an education that frees every child's potential, create social protection floor for all, rebuild an economy based on the respect of human dignity and the respect for the earth. And I will finish with a proposal. Next year, for the International Day of Families, could we meet again with families in poverty as active participants, to learn with them what the pandemic brought to their life and the life of their communities, what they want for the future, not only for themselves, but for all, and what they expect from us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel. This is a great proposal. I know that when we also observe the Poverty Day, that ATD is very much involving, and I think we should address this question also at that forum. We don't have much time for question and answers, but I would like to acknowledge 3 questions. I will read them and acknowledge who presented them, and I will ask them all together so other speakers can think about their answers. So the first question comes from Ahmed Aref, who is from Doha International Family Institute. And he says that violence against women tends to increase during every type of emergency. WHO recently reported a growing violence against women due to pandemic. How effective would be the national machineries and NGOs in providing appropriate response throughout these circumstances? And this question is for Laura. And now I also have a question for Rosario from Ana Margarita Romero from Family Institute, University de La Sabana in Colombia. The question is, what actions can you recommend to promote in our governments the importance of integral family policies towards prevention? And another question, perhaps Dominique could answer that one. The question is from Raymond Mutura from Kenya, from Stratford University, and he is asking, why are governments shy from long-term solutions and only focus on short-term policies? Maybe Laura, you could start answering the question about violence. Thank you.
Laura, I think.
Hi there. Yeah, sorry, there was some substantial background noise that I was just trying to get rid of. Okay, thanks so much for that question, Ahmed, about responding to the increase in violence against women that we're seeing in the context of the COVID crisis. I copied a link in the chat for a series of policy briefs that UN Women has recently launched, looking at different aspects of responding to what we're calling the shadow pandemic. But I mean, just briefly, I think some of the measures that we're advocating for are for governments to substantially increase the support that they're providing, the funding that they're providing for shelters, for helplines, and so on. And we're seeing some quite innovative measures by both governments and civil society and the private sector to use mobile and digital technology to enable women or those who are affected by violence to be able to seek help. I think working closely with women's organizations, which is this is true of during COVID as it is in normal times, but women's organizations have often been at the forefront of providing these services and monitoring the situation very closely. So I would suggest that governments also need to redouble their efforts in that regard. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight that, you know, since the ILO Convention on preventing violence against women and men in the workplace, I also wanted to highlight that there's a responsibility on the part of employers as well to think about how they can support their employees, particularly in the context of kind of remote working and so on. And there's a handbook that the ILO and UN Women has produced, which I think would be a helpful resource for those. Yeah, so I'll just leave it there. But there is this series of policy briefs that I would really recommend you take a look at on the UN Women website, which goes into all of these issues and many more. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Laura. Rosario, if you could address the question about integral policies for prevention.
Yes, thank you, Renata, and thank you, Margarita, for this question. I think the first one and most important is that, or one result of the report is that families are really not acknowledged as agents. I think countries haven't assumed all the potential families have as agents. And if they don't assume that, they cannot have a family lens approach. So family lens approach in family design, in family policy design, it's I think it's the first step and the most important to be able to gradually include this lens in different areas of family, of social life and economic life and etc. So I think if we assume that, that would be very helpful for governments. The second one is that it's a result of the previous point that allows to link families to special aims or goals. For example, parenting programs and involving parents in education, it's essential because parents are intergenerational agents that transmit not only knowledge, they only transmit ways of thinking, ways of relating, ways of even being happy with others. And this has enormous consequences in the development of children, in women, and in social relationships. So I think that's a very important point. I think that would be enough for the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosario. Now a very difficult question for you, Dominique, about the short-term policies from governments.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Raymond. It's a great question and something we really need to address. And I think we need to address it because I think it's something that existed pre-COVID, the reticence to invest in the future. COVID just brings it closer to our attention and actually brings it at greater risk. If you look, for instance, could take a couple of high-income countries, the costing of the UBI in Spain, the Universal Basic Income in Spain in response to the lockdowns, or the furloughing scheme in the United Kingdom. The first one costs about 15% of GDP, and the second one costs about 25% of GDP. To put that in other terms, 25% of GDP will pay for 10 years of a Danish childcare system. It would pay for 25 years of family cash benefits in the United Kingdom. And so what's happening is we're seeing countries are reacting and panicking a little bit and paying for a lack of investment in the years preceding COVID. The countries that tended to see out the global financial crisis better were Nordic countries. And I'm sorry, it doesn't always help to hear this. The Nordic countries manage it, but the Nordic countries have decades of social investment behind them and infrastructure in their welfare systems, which means the administrative costs of expanding a universal child benefit is essentially the click of a button. Whereas if you're in Azerbaijan, you might have to implement 6 different brand new cash transfers, all of which come with administrative costs. Now, of course, setting up something long-term doesn't just come with the transfer cost, it comes with the administrative costs. And I think the governments are, well, any crisis, it's the same with a health crisis, poverty crisis, an education crisis. It brings us the horizon in terms of your choice and decision making much closer to you. If you're a family, if you're a person, and if you're a government, you're dealing with the panic today. You're putting out the fire that's today, and they're throwing a lot of water at that fire. Well, we'll see what it achieves. What I want to say about that is basically two things. That short-term investment is putting long-term investment at risk. The big expensive interventions now means we're going to see austerity in the future, and I worry about family policies in that. The second thing I want to say, and it's picking up on something one or two other people have said, is that COVID provides us an opportunity to change the discourse. We've not quite hit austerity yet. And if we're quick and we can get in there and speak to the right people, we can talk about changing the way we think about public policies as a whole. And why I think that's the case, it's because we see a global phenomenon like we haven't seen before. And we're seeing investments at 1/4 of a country's national wealth in a given year. The other more cynical answer is, of course, they're too busy working on fiscal stimulus packages for firms to invest in families. And at a glance